So, we all know that the big event that kicked off Phantasy Star Online was the Pioneer Project. It was a massive endeavor in an attempt to find a new home for those on Corral. Eventually, they discover the planet Ragol, begin to settle there, and just as the second wave of citizens arrive, we all know what happened. But something that doesn't really get brought up is why everyone was leaving Corral. There are whispers here and there about there being a war on the planet, but the repercussions of that war aren't really visible, at least to us. You see, the war on Corral wasn't just some far-off historical event to everyone on Pioneer 2, and few people know that better than a woman we meet named Alicia Baz. Alicia is by no means an important character to the main story. In fact, she really only appears in 2 quests, for most people. That said, if you've already watched the video on Bernie's story, you'll know she serves a greater importance than just being one of the many characters we meet while taking on quests. A common trend among all of the NPCs we've met so far is a certain level of backstory that isn't explained in-game. Sure, there are hints here and there that you can pick up on, but sometimes certain essential details simply aren't brought up. Alicia isn't any different in this regard, but her story is heavily tied to the events leading up to the game itself. So the question is, what makes this seemingly minor character so important in the game's past and eventually future? To start answering that, it's time to look into the history books. As you may be familiar with at this point, the Japanese exclusive Material Collections book contains the biographies of many characters in Phantasy Star Online. Alicia's story is included, but within her biography are quite a few other big names that have to be brought up first. So before we get to Alicia, let's set the scene with the events that happened prior to the game. While we don't know why the various wars on Corral started, one major organization at the center of it all was the 10-Nation Alliance, which you may have heard of before. Serving as the central governmental authority on Corral, the 10-Nation Alliance was equipped with a military that was actively fighting against resistant forces around the planet. Enlisted in this military at one point were 3 fighters that would go on to be known as the 3 legendary swordsmen. The first is Heathcliff Flowen, who stayed in the military for his entire career and became a high-ranking governmental figure. The second is Zoke Miyama. Due to increasing unrest within his nation, he eventually defected from the military and formed an anti-government organization fighting as a mercenary. And the third and final swordsman is Donoff Baz. Given the nickname Demon Soldier for his strict attitude, he would be the first to abandon the military before Zoke. But the reason he left is entirely different. Donoff felt that he had to take responsibility due to the failure of a large operation under his command. All 3 swordsmen would eventually make it to Ragol, but where does Alicia fit into the story? Let's finally take a look at her biography and see what we can learn. The constant warring on Corral left Alicia as an orphan at a very young age. It was only by sheer luck that she was found by a hero in the military, Heathcliff Flowen. Flowen took Alicia in and began to raise her as his daughter. Eventually though, he had to board Pioneer 1 on the maiden voyage to Ragol, so he left her in the care of Donoff Baz to serve as her adoptive father. 6 years later, with Pioneer 2 soon to make its own journey to Ragol, Alicia pushed Donoff for them to board the ship and follow in Flowen's footsteps. While Donoff had been retired for a few years at this point, Alicia began working in a lab specializing in ecological research, and with Pioneer 2 finally in orbit above Ragol, we can now move to when we meet her for ourselves. Our first run-in with Alicia is in the quest Native Research, but she's pretty light on the personal details. She tells us she works at an undisclosed lab and would like you to collect biological data for undisclosed reasons, and before you go, Alicia says to not disclose this task to anyone else. From there, the quest is actually quite simple. All it consists of is fighting a few different types of monsters in the forest and collecting data from them. There's a strange computer terminal that can be found, but it doesn't appear to have any useful information. So with everything taken care of, Alicia considers it a job well done, before she lets slip some undisclosed research the data will be used for. And that's the quest. It feels a bit light compared to all the backstory leading up to it, but let's go to the following quest and see if we can learn anything new. Later on, we can see Alicia again in the quest Forest of Sorrow. She talks about the data you previously collected for her and the secrecy surrounding her request. Well, this time, rather than approach you on behalf of the lab and having to follow protocol, Alicia made this request as an individual. The data you gathered isn't sitting right with her, especially considering the extensive research she's done in the past. So, understanding the risks involved, she wants you to take her to the surface so she can see the animals for herself. Things proceed smoothly with the two of you fighting your way into the forest before you come across a curious sight: a young Hildebeer. It takes off before either of you can get a close look at it, but Alicia is starting to realize the data you collected for her is indeed correct. From what she says, the animals here in the forest aren't supposed to be acting this way, and the only reason she can see for this is the gene pool being completely altered. That terminal we found in the first quest is also here, and taking a look at it provides some insight into how Hildebeers acted before whatever gene manipulation took place. With that fun thought in mind, it's not long before the young Hildebeer is seen once again, and it's not in good shape, with Alicia seeing elements of injuries and malnutrition. It's a sorry sight, and Alicia doesn't believe the current hostile environment can allow young animals like this to properly survive. You're asked for your opinion on bringing the animal back to Pioneer 2 so it has a chance, but whatever option you choose, Alicia concludes it's not a good idea to bring it into a completely different environment. Before heading back to Pioneer 2, she makes a choice comment about the ethics of the lab she worked at and makes it sound like it's not a current career of hers. Anyways, Alicia promises to look further into why the animals on Ragol had this sudden behavioral change, and that's the quest. She heads out before you could return to the Hunters Guild, but talking to someone nearby, we learn that she did in fact leave the lab she was working at. So there we go, and to some people, this is the last we see of Alicia. What made these two quests a little weird is that there were absolutely no hints of Alicia's upbringing, no mention of Floen or Donoff or anything like that. These just focused on her work for a secretive laboratory and how a difference of ethics led to her splitting off and conducting her own research. This follows a pretty unfortunate pattern the game has, where certain character details only exist outside of the game itself. So far. Alicia does make one more appearance in the game in a quest that shows up much later, but we have a bit of ground to cover before we get there. During the quests that happen in the meantime, we have a few interactions with a ranger named Bernie. It turns out that Bernie has been working alongside Zoke Miyama, the third of the legendary swordsmen, to find out what happened to those aboard Pioneer 1. Unfortunately, while Zoke and Bernie were investigating the ruins, they got overwhelmed with monsters, and Zoke loses his life. It's a very sad fate for such a major character in the game's backstory. Another important part is the fate of Heathcliff Floen, the man who originally saved Alicia. As we come to learn in episode 2, he met a very unfortunate end, but at this point all that's known is the incorrect report from Pioneer 1 that he's already passed away. So with 2 of the 3 legendary swordsmen declared dead, that leaves only 1 still around. The final quest in this storyline is named The Retired Hunter, and this is where we meet Alicia's adoptive father, the legendary Donoff Baz. In the many years since his retirement, Donoff has become considerably ill and is aware that his life will end very soon. At the same time, he tells you about an unfulfilled dream of his, which is to kill 10,000 monsters, and with only a mere 99 to go, he left the facility he was in and wants our help to make that dream come true before it's too late. After accepting the quest, Donoff makes his way to the ruins, and as we're about to follow him, we can see a certain 2 people in the distance. The first is Bernie, who was just barely able to escape the ruins and vows to make the most of the time he's been given. And the second is Donoff's adopted daughter, and she gets right to the point. She's aware that you've been talking with her father and brings up his friendship with Floen. Alicia believes Donoff's dream was shared by the 2 of them, which is why he's so determined to fulfill it, and that he needs our help. So at this point, we can meet Donoff in the ruins and begin the quest proper, but when he meets up with us, we can return to Pioneer 2 and get some extra dialogue. First, talking to Bernie, he and Donoff have a conversation in private and we can only catch a few details. It's obvious now that they're talking about Alicia, and Bernie is telling him not to worry about her. We don't know the specifics, but it sounds like Donoff and Bernie have a lot of trust in one another. Then, when we talk to Alicia, she can clearly see the condition her father is in and urges you to continue helping him. With that, it's time to head into the ruins and hunt down the last 99 monsters Donoff needs to fulfill his dream. As the quest goes on, it's clear his condition is worsening, but eventually, with the last enemy slain, Donoff can only express his relief to finally make his dream come true. Normally, this is where the quest ends, with Donoff thanking you, his illness finally catching up to him, and him letting out Flowen's name before passing away. But by completing all the necessary quests beforehand and beating this quest on very hard or ultimate, something else happens. Things start off similarly, with Donoff thanking you for helping him achieve his goal. But after a long pause, he asks about your name and if you know his daughter. Despite being so eager to enter the ruins, Donoff knows his request was a bit unreasonable, and he sincerely thanks you for going along with it. Then he talks about Alicia. Even with his best efforts, he wasn't able to find Flowen and reunite the two of them, and considering all of the events that have taken place so far, Donoff is admittedly at a loss of what to do, bringing up Rico Tyrell and her father, the principal of Pioneer 2. He finds some comfort in knowing that you helped Alicia in the past though, and even indirectly mentions Bernie, hoping he becomes as skilled of a swordsman as Flowen, despite being taught under him. Despite the long life he's had, with everything that's happened, Donoff can't say how things are going to turn out. Rather, he says it's something that you, Bernie, and Alicia will help determine for yourselves. As for him and his two close friends, Flowen lived and died serving the government, while Zoke left that life and passed away just recently. And, blaming himself for leaving the two of them behind, it's now his turn to leave this earth. With a dry laugh, he comments on the fate of each of them and says that you're free to go. With that, Donoff lets out the names of his friends one last time, and his illness finally catches up to him. Upon returning, we can talk to Bernie and Alicia once again. Bernie can only let out his frustration at the last of the three swordsmen being taken by the planet. Calling the three of them the heroes of the past, now they're all gone. Alicia, on the other hand, appears to be at peace with Donoff's death, thanking you for making his last moments comfortable. We can go ahead and end the quest right now, but heading to the teleporter once again, there's a path now open to go to the forest. It's a little odd, especially since there doesn't appear to be anything nearby, so for us, it's time to get back to fighting. It's not long before that terminal we've seen before is found once again, and while it can't access the main system, there's something left locally on it about Flowen. It's hard to make out, but the year 084 is seen, which is the current in-game year, 3084. Then we can see there's a message from Flowen attached to it, a message meant for his two best friends. Flowen starts by expressing his regret that the three of them aren't able to meet again on Ragol after all these years. At the time of the recording, Ragol was peaceful, and he goes on to make a jab at Donoff saying it wouldn't be a good environment for him. Flowen then promises that Alicia will be there for him, especially since she's always looked up to him since she was very young. He then brings up Zoke and how he left the military on bad terms, warning him against doing anything dangerous, which he appears to have a reputation for. Flowen concludes the message by saying the three friends will have a lot to discuss once they're finally able to see each other once again. And whether he's referring to Ragol or the afterlife, he bids them farewell and the message ends. Talking to Alicia one last time, she brings up how she was adopted by Flowen. According to her, he was strongly against boarding Pioneer 1 and continued to refuse until he was ordered to. And as he left, he told Alicia that evolution and damnation may be two sides of the same coin, and it all depends on those who are handling it. The quest then comes to an end, as does Alicia's story and the tale of the three legendary swordsmen. Despite Alicia's story having the fewest details of any character so far, I find it very hard to have conclusive feelings about her story. She initially boarded Pioneer 2 to look for the man who saved her, and now she's left having to process not just his death, but the death of the man who raised her. On top of that, we see a message left behind by Flowen, who regretted not seeing his two best friends and hoped to see them in the future. It's a story of regret and loss and an unknown future on a planet seemingly cursed with damnation. At the same time though, it can be seen as a story of hope. Flowen, Donoff, and Zoke saw incredible potential in both Alicia and Bernie. Despite the swordsmen all passing away, in Donoff's last moments he has confidence that the three of you will create a better future. It may be hard to see now, but the torch has been passed to the next generation, and maybe one day Ragol will evolve into a safe home for everyone who fled Corral. It's an interesting mixed bag of emotions, and it plays directly into what Floen once told the girl that he saved. Evolution or damnation, it all depends on who can change the future. In the biographies of both Bernie and Alicia, it's noted that they're now working together. We never learn what their actual goal is, but with the state Ragol is left in, there's a lot of work left to do in order to make it safe. Between Alicia studying the wildlife and Bernie discovering the fate of Pioneer 1, they have a lot on their plate, but with the support of the previous generation, it's hard not to believe that, one step at a time, they'll start making things right. You wanna know what I think though? Take a look at this artwork celebrating the 3-year anniversary of Blue Burst. There's a cake ready for everyone, but there's only one person who can only laugh with joy at the sheer quality of the food before her. Clearly this means Alicia retired. Wait, real quick. If you'd like to see these videos a few days early, you can now become a member on the channel. And as a little end of the year gift for everyone, the next video will be out next week, and for members, you can watch it right now.